and welcome to Live Your Childhood Dream. I'm Ruth, and today I'm delighted to have my guest, Willam for Conscious Coaching. So welcome, thank you so much for being on the programme. I'd love to just start by just asking you a little bit about conscious coaching. I see that your strapline is the truth will set you free, and I wondered if that was sort of a good place to sort of start. Just tell me a little bit about how conscious coaching came about.
Well, I guess it kind of came from when I've been a sportsman all my life, and I played professionally in sport, and I always had a lot of issues. I thought, I kind of had some issues that could have been close to depression at times, that I thought, I couldn't understand how I was feeling. And my background, my mum, my mother and family is like, you could say, spiritually inclined. So I've got that kind of holistic view of experiences. And so gradually, as I travelled around the world and playing tournaments, I seemed to learn a lot about, how I was reacting and how I was acting and what was causing different experiences and pains in the body, more emotional pains and different things. And coupled with the holistic view, I seemed to generate some wisdom from somewhere that I really felt that could help some people. Your truth will set you free. It's kind of a little play on words, that the truth will set you free. It's just more, it's trying to say that almost everything you need is within you, or in front of you. Perhaps the experiences that are gonna shape you. So it was trying to give the power back to whoever is looking for the answer or that sort of thing. But it's separate. In some ways, it's separate from my squash. Like I'm a squash coach, and I use conscious coaching, which is trying to support thinking about things in different ways. One of the main ways I think that we look at it is about winning and losing, trying to really look at what that means. A lot of kids, I just talk to them all the time about what it means to make mistakes, what it means to lose, and how you feel about that. So yeah, I do work with people outside of the court with conscious coaching as the brand, and then I also work as a head coach in a squash club. Not as conscious coaching, but that's the kind of the background.
So you're sort of bringing the tools with you into your coaching, and I guess it's sort of part and parcel of yourself. Is that what you would sort of say?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think I try and work on my own, any issues I have, and then I'll if I'm working with someone in the conscious coaching, and then that goes across to a lot of the kids. I find sometimes the adults when I'm doing squash coaching, sometimes they don't want to be told about being tense or being frustrated or mistakes, and that's okay. But a lot of the kids, I find they're quite open or benefit from, I spend a lot of time in because I'm actually working more as a squash coach at the moment than with conscious coaching.
Okay.
It's an interesting journey, which I'm really enjoying. But a lot of the kids, I really think a lot about how I can support them in building a better attitude about life or about themselves. So it's a bit of a mixing pot how it all came around, as I guess most people's experiences are.
Absolutely, gosh. And how does that sort of play into, obviously this webcast is all about sort of living your childhood dream and sort of tapping into maybe what you love to do as a child. Is this obviously I don't know, were you coaching people as a child?
Well, no, squash from my main dream, after wanting to be like a policeman and a tractor driver when I was young. I think the main dream was I wanted to be I started squash when I was 4.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah. My first real dream, I think, was to be a professional squash player. And I think that was a real roller coaster ride, because I think like childhood dreams are generally by the nature of them, they're not realistic in any way, which is the beauty of it. And I guess you learn the realism and try to maintain the dream as you grow older. But I think I lost a lot of my passion for or belief in myself as I turned, the middling teenage years. I maybe put on a bit of weight before I grew, and different things made me feel as if I wouldn't be able to achieve my dream of being a professional squash player, being one of the top players in the world. But I had some certain experiences when I was coming towards the end of school that kind of, I went to see some world-class players play in Canary Wharf in London. This is one of the main affirming moments where I was like, well, I'm really going to do this. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go and be a pro player. And I went to see my role models play, basically, and it was inspiring, and that was it. I was going to do it. And I had a few experiences like that kind of brought me back from made me feel like it was possible. It kind of sparked that. So I did it for 4 years. I did live that childhood dream for 4 years. And then it was interesting to see how the real reality of life comes into it, because it's very exciting, because I left school and I was like, that's it, I'm going to do it. So I went to train full time with a coach. I actually lived with him for 3 years, and with a group of other professional players. So it really, everything came together at that time to support me to do that, which was wonderful. My parents were really behind me, which was wonderful, and they supported me financially best they could, and in different ways. And I did travel. I think 2 years in or a year in, I traveled my first tournament to South America and traveled all over the world. But the difficulty was I had an issue with my nerves and with performing in the tournaments. And I learned a lot. Must have lost a huge amount of matches. I had this real difficulty in just being able to just be myself and play a good game of squash, which everyone was telling me that I could do.
Yeah.
And so that was a really good learning, and I did learn a huge amount. And by the end of the 4 years of my time living that, I could say that I went from a emotional wreck on a squash court in a competitive event to someone who was quite calm and able to deliver most of the time some good squash.
That's amazing. And how old were you at that point?
I started, I think, 17 and a half when I started training full time. So that's maybe when I turned professional.
Yeah.
Obviously, leading up to that, I was a junior squash player playing a lot of squash, and had been for a while. So yeah.
So is that time a sort of flux anyway, as young person, and at the same time the professional squash coach, playing at the same time as well. So that sounds incredible. It sounds like you almost, you were saying about that focus of seeing the people you looked up to, the people who were actually doing what you wanted to do, and that sort of inspiration. And you said that you just sort of looked at them and sort of thought, right, this is what I'm going to do. Gave you the confidence initially. So it sounds like you've been using these sort of tools of sort of creation for a long time. But am I right in saying that?
Yeah. Well, it was by chance that I went to see them. I think my coach, or that man that was teaching me, he had a player who he was coaching in that tournament, a big squash tournament, one of the big ones, and I saw some incredible matches. I was glued to it, and I was this, I managed to get in the front row, so you could see the sweat dripping off their faces. It was just a real, they're such, I mean, as the top people are in any field, they just had this aura about them, and it really rubbed off on me in the incredible matches that I saw. So it was really, and it was all inspiring. The good thing about squash is that, after the match, I had the equivalent of Roger Federer stood talking to someone about his journey home because he'd lost. Wow. And I was standing like 5 feet from him. It wasn't a big crowd because it's not as big as tennis. So I was this close to the equivalent. This guy was a Roger Federer of squash, or a Nadal of squash, and I was stood next to him. I didn't say hello. I was a bit starstruck, but it was that kind of, there was an interesting interesting way to rekindle some of the lost passion that happens through teenage years. I think it's difficult to maintain that with with the whole lot of being a teenager. It's just all the ups and downs and the changes that you go through, and so it was interesting to have that changed, or have that brought back to me that I had from my younger years, before going through those changes.
Sure. Gosh. And so sort of, I guess, like, continue your story, I guess. You were doing a fresh, and then you said that there was a point where this wasn't the right thing for you, or
Well, yeah, the reality started kicking in. So when you're 17, there was a bit of a honeymoon period where I was out of school, so I wasn't really an adult yet. I didn't have, compared to now, when I would say I'm an adult and I'm responsible for myself and a house and those things that I've no idea how. No one told me anything about any of that, actually. I think as I was growing up, they kind of happened gradually, but it started creeping in. I started thinking about the money, and after 4 years, I think there was a time when I'd learned a huge amount, and I think one of the younger players came up and that I'd always beaten through all the age groups, and he came up and he beat me in the Welsh National Championships. And I thought to myself, I don't know if what I'm thinking, but I think it might be time to stop playing professional squash, which was quite big, because I was like, whoa, that's big. It's my childhood dream. I think and lots of areas of my life had started changing. I hadn't really had a relationship, and then I came into a wonderful relationship around about the same time. So it seemed like my life was slowly moving in a different direction, but I wasn't sure. So I put the words yes and no in a bag, and I said to the bag, I said, should I stop playing squash? And the bag said no. And then I said, should I stop competing professionally? And the bag pulled out yes. I was like, oh, okay.
Wow.
I left the decision outside of myself, because I didn't really think that I could make a decision that wasn't biased, we say.
Sure. So you use that as a tool, basically. Yeah,
it was one that I'd been told. So yeah, then to that point, it was interesting, because everything I thought I was going to be wasn't going to happen then, which was it was sad, but also kind of exciting, because then I had no idea what was going to happen, and I had to start formulating new visions or new childhood dreams. Someone said to me soon after I'm jumping another year now, perhaps, after I stopped when I was about 22 or 21. And someone said, oh, you've got a proper job now then, have you? And I said, what do you mean? It was amazing. I was living my childhood dream for those 4 years. And I think that's how it's seen a lot of the time, that you do your dream, and a lot of people's childhood dreams, they look a bit strange, or they don't look like proper jobs to begin with. And but certainly I think it's what I gained from doing that was not potentially the career in what I thought it was going to be, but it was invaluable experience and growth as a person.
Absolutely, the same. It sounds like the sort of experience you've had is, something which most people don't go through, or might go through much later in life. But the fact that all that, the competitions and all the dedication, I guess, and everything you've taken. So I guess everything from that you're sort of taking now into your coaching and into your other work.
Yeah. It changed me a lot, I think, the 4 years, and it's a massive, I don't think about it as much, but it is a massive part of what I teach now. If I talk about every time a child's upset about winning and losing, I've got, I've experienced everything that they've experienced, especially when it comes to the sport. It might be different if I'm working with an adult in an area of their life. I might not. I can still hopefully relate in different ways. But the interesting thing is that I'm now a squash coach, or a head squash coach. So even though that was my childhood dream, it's still part of what I'm doing now. So sometimes I think to myself, actually, I'm actually living part of what my childhood dream was, which is quite nice, and making a living from that, which is, you know, we can get quite down on ourselves, but when I look at it, it's really lovely, really nice.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes these things don't look quite how we anticipate them to look.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things I talk about with this sort of childhood dream is it's kind of tapping into the essence of it, in opposed to the whole, you know, full dream. Like a little bit like, you know, you said originally about wanting to be sort of like a tractor driver or a policeman or whatever, you know, it's like the essence of that dream. And actually, I'm really intrigued. You keep talking about the winning and the losing. Obviously, that's really important in sport. By the way, I have very little background in sport at all, so I'm completely your student here. But I'm kind of intrigued on how sort of things you do say to the children, and sort of how that would relate to the coaching. Just
well, it's tricky when it comes to that, to actually make a difference in. There's so many different. I'm thinking about all the different children that I work with, and each one requires a different way of talking to. Some people, you can just tell them how it is, and I might say, you know, a lot of the time I do a lot of affirmations now, and very recently learning to try and change negative beliefs about myself to positive ones, even if I don't think they're currently true. And so I'll talk to them. A lot of them get frustrated about mistakes, and I try and say, look, explain the process of actually. Sometimes it takes about 10,000 hours to become world class at something. It's in one of the book. I think it's in the book Bounce. That people.
Yeah, I was going to say rings a bell. Yeah.
But they talk about error training and the actual fact that we learn everything. We learn everything through error. You know, one of my future son, my future nephew-in-law. So, but yeah, basically my brother's son. I've been holding him a lot, and I'm noticing how he's just constantly trying to stand up. Constantly, maybe about 1,000 times a day, his feet are hitting the floor. They're just constantly going. So essentially, if that was a 5-year-old, they'd be failing. They'd be pretty miserable about it, you know. And if we look at it in squash, if a child was trying to hit one of their shots 1,000 times and missing it, essentially what we're doing, they would be quite frustrated. So I try and give them a reality check. Say, look, these mistakes are really there. Because I normally say well done when someone makes a mistake, because I can see something. Okay. You've done slightly better there, or that was a bit better, and some of them get, what are you saying, well done? Well, look, I can see you're making effort, and every time you make a mistake, it's another step towards improvement or wherever you want to go. I don't know at what age we start teaching children that mistakes or failure, we call it failure, is not a good thing. There's some children I teach that really struggle with it, and it comes from parents as well. The parents have they're not patient, or they expect to see things a certain way, and the culture. But yeah, things like, it's okay to make mistakes while we're learning. I might just repeat that over and over again. It's okay to make mistakes while we're learning. And if it's not getting through, I try and talk to them about, why they're feeling. What are you feeling about that? How do mistakes make you feel?
I guess in society, it is from a very young age we're told that mistakes are not right, isn't it? In school we have to complete exams, and if you make a mistake, you get a cross by your work and whatever, and it just goes on and on, doesn't it? It's I think what you're the sort of thing you're teaching and using in your coaching is just so important. As you said, and I love the idea of just saying thank you, not thank you, saying well done. The mistake.
It's the same reaction. So obviously I can't stop myself when I see the good shot. I'm like, oh, that was an amazing shot, but it's still either I don't say anything on a mistake, or nothing, or it's it needs to be the same reaction, so that they feel safe to. A lot of adults even, they say sorry to me when they hit a mistake, or children do, and some I don't feel like I can breach that topic, but some I'll say, why are you apologising, and go through that same process about that.
Yeah.
But the losing's a big one, because you know, people talk about taking away competition, but like if you'd have taken away my competition as I was developing through professional squash, I wouldn't have developed in this way. It was hard, and it was sometimes not very nice. Probably because of my own beliefs about winning and losing. And really, what I'm trying to teach them is that winning and losing, whilst you've lost the match, it doesn't mean that shouldn't affect your self-worth. It doesn't mean you're not worth anything. You're not worth anything less. You're not a bad person. Yes, you may have disappointed your parents, but that's unfortunately that's something that shouldn't be happening. If that's not very good.
Yeah.
I'm saying it here. It's not very good parenting, you know, and being blunt about it. If your child feels like they disappointed you at any time through that process. So yeah, it's a bit of a mixing pot, trying to help them see that losing is one, a way we learn, and two, not that bad.
Yeah, no, I think that's, and I think those sorts of that sort of words of wisdom has got such a broad application, not just with children but with adults and everyone really, because we do. And I think, you know, you very briefly pulled on it there, but you know, the idea where people do say sorry for making a mistake, and
or they don't even make a decision. Perhaps I heard one story where the 11 plus is a big kind of one for this, because at 11 or 10 years old you're examined in bucks. I don't know if you know, in bucks you're examined. And if you pass, you go to basically one of the good schools, and if you don't, you go to a bad school. And the children, they get really, you know, tutored a lot, and you've got to get it right. And I heard a story of someone who was having a lesson of something, and they were unable to. They kept asking. This wasn't 11 plus. This might have been something else, music or sport. Saying, "Oh, am I doing it right? Is this correct?" But before they actually made the effort, so it was like they were so conditioned to the fact that they could only win or get it right, that they didn't allow themselves to do it if they thought they were going to get it wrong, which is really, on so many levels, it takes away all the fun, all the you know, the hard graft and all the development, I think.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, you know, it does squash you know, squashes development, it squashes creativity.
Yes, creativity, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, so that's like the 11 plus, or the getting into the next school, and just sort of giving the audience a little background.
The next anything, I guess, isn't it? What's next? Yeah. But we don't. There's a good quote. Sometimes not getting what you want is a miracle in disguise, I think, isn't it? Because can take you on. You don't know where it's going.
Absolutely. So I guess I wanted to talk a little bit more about, I know in some ways conscious coaching is probably a slightly more new, I guess, of what you're doing, but I wanted to maybe get a little bit more of kind of your vision of it, or what would you love to create, I guess. Maybe that would be a
it's a strange one, because I had a strong vision. This is another case of my vision and then being changed by life. I could see myself working with people. I did run a workshop or a class. It was called The True Nature of the Ego, and we talked about what my experience of the ego was. And so the vision before was running, you know, having people who wanted support in different areas. I'm not currently a trained counsellor or a life coach, but it's that type of work that I'm developing. And that was my vision, to do that and to support people. And it was really what I felt really at home when I was working with people in sessions. And I kind of I think I'm going on a bit of a detour. I feel like I've always been part of squash and like my head coach work now. But it does feel like I'm coming back round at some point for it to be. It's like a platform that's for me to develop or to take in a certain way at some point. So at the moment, I work with maybe a couple of people or a few people in the back in that, and it's not my main work. But so it's a little bit unknown, which is interesting and quite exciting at the same time. So I'm kind of waiting to see where it will develop. I've also kind of had to let go of my own vision of what that is and almost put it out there. So it's out there at the moment. So yeah, like I said, a little bit unknown, it was really strange actually when that happened. It was really, I was like, I thought I was going to do that, and this is also occurring. So yeah.
Yeah, I think things tend to be, actually, the more people I speak to, the more people I find are doing a little bit of all sorts while things are building up. I mean, I was just saying to you before we started this interview, I do sort of several different jobs while I'm developing the storytelling views. But I guess it's having that vision and that focus, which is like you were saying, you know, that kind of overall vision of what it might look like. I mean, do you have more of a feel of it than maybe a vision? I don't know. Sometimes there's a sort of,
it does
more
feel
more
like
looking at the energetics, I guess.
Okay. It does have I was looking at before of a feeling that it would be powerful for some sort of transition for young men or young boys in developing them to go through to adulthood. Because I felt quite, in my process, I felt quite unsure and unknown, and would have loved someone to you know, and I had certain things, but I'd love someone to give me a little bit more tuition on growing up into the world in many different ways. So I feel like it could develop into some program where I'm working with people on that. I think actually when I created it, I don't think I was ready to step into the role. So I think I'm currently, if we look at the grander kind of more universal picture of it, it feels like I'm being developed in many different skills that, you know, I'm learning so many new skills in different things that I'm doing outside of that, to prepare me to do that, or for whatever's something that might happen.
That's really exciting. And I think actually what you were just talking about initially, about having a program eventually maybe for young men growing up, I think that's something which is, I think, actually not very much out there really. Not in this sort of way. So I mean, if that's something you end up doing in the future, I think that sounds incredible. But you know, it's that level, isn't it? It's that balance and that pressure, and of, you know, we're all being developed all the time, aren't we? I think it's like nothing. And also, obviously, we're in these times at the moment. I mean, obviously, we've just had summer solstice today, last night. So I don't know. Do you feel there's sort of new beginnings coming? Something like?
It's interesting, the process with because I've been, as I said, my family has a hugely spiritual inclination and background. But at some point over the past 9 months, I almost stepped completely out of that view. Not the fact that what I feel and what I can see and whatnot, but I felt like I was so much in the universe and the spiritual side of things that it was withholding me from taking part in daily life or in the reality. So it was like one day I had to go. That was almost one of the reasons why it felt like a lot of pressure. I always had this universal vision of myself. Say universal or higher vision and whatnot might make sense of that, but it was almost like a lot of pressure I was putting on myself, that I had to be achieving that highest vision of myself, or what was in store for myself now. I had to be doing it now. And when I let go of that and just said, you know what, I'll just see what happens. What I'm doing, you know, I was comparing somehow I was comparing being a squash coach to being whoever I was, you know, in an egotistical way, some major healer or some a big person in the world, and it was pressure. And someday I went, actually, it doesn't matter. I'm quite happy doing what I'm doing. It's very fulfilling, and I let go of that pressure, and was able to actually get involved in the daily activities of my life. So now I think I'm finding a bit more balance between, my daily task and working towards the vision that we're talking about.
That's fascinating, and actually it's really refreshing, because I think often, I mean, especially people who are in the sort of spiritual circles, and there is this feeling that we're supposed to be becoming this greater of ourselves, the higher self and everything, and that's brilliant, but it can be hard to ground. And I think what you're and I think obviously, like with your work, with your with the coaching, with the sports coaching you're doing, it's all about the physical, isn't it? And that's just so important, because I mean, I know when I first started with the spiritual stuff, it's like, well, how do you even ground? Does it feel like I'm up here in the air? So it sounds like you've got these sorts of tools, which just very practical know-how, alongside with your spiritual beliefs and your experience.
Well, it's almost like I kind of took it one day, and I thought, well, now I kind of look at it, and almost some of the spiritual side of things, like we're talking about the higher self, or the why we're here, and the other one is what's the other one that I can't remember the other one. When we talk about why did we choose to come here to the planet, and why did we choose this, and I look at it and go, sometimes I go, you know what, I don't mind. I'll that choice. It's an interesting topic to talk about, but for me, as I feel about it now, I don't feel negatively towards it, but it doesn't assist me at the moment in my daily life. So I kind of I let it go to one side, and almost think it's none of our business. It doesn't support me in my development to worry about why did I choose some of the things I've chosen. So and so did that, so what's choosing here. And I had an astrology reading, and I think it's really powerful. And I'm not in any way criticizing any of the things. It's just a strange place that I came, because most of my conversations used to be filled with that sort of thing and discussing that, which was wonderful. And it's an interesting process that now it's become almost the opposite. Whilst I still maybe mull over that occasionally myself in private. But I think you're right. You can feel a lot of pressure to just continue achieving that highest vision, and I think everyone's doing their best, and everyone's just doing just fine.
Absolutely, it reminds me of that. I can't remember where the quote is, but it's like, what should I do? Chopping water, chopping wood, collecting water. I think it's a Buddhist. What's in front of you, that's the most you can do, isn't it? And just very, very refreshing. It's wonderful. I love it.
Really, I sort of think I'm really learning right now what it means to be a human, and just do the basic human things before I go back to some more of these other teachings, should we say.
That's wonderful. Well, I think we'll sort of tie up the interview. So I mean, it's been really, really interesting. I mean, really, really refreshing. I just love it. So I mean, obviously the main thing you're doing at the moment is sports coaching. But obviously you said you are doing some personal coaching as well. And so if people want to sort of get in touch, and is the best way through your website?
Yeah, you can find on the website that I work with people. It's you can go to Willam at conscious-coaching.co.uk. You can send me an email through that. So I do work with people at the moment, and it's the work that I do, it follows the same path that I'm on. It's still it's quite grounded right now, the work that I do with people, and trying to the work before. It was, you know, maybe a year ago when I was working with people that had more of the spiritual background, and now it seems the work I'm doing, that the people that I work with need, it's very thought based. So working with negative beliefs about ourselves, and almost just leaving, you know, doing what we can, using our power, and at the moment leaving the supreme or the divine power to interact with us as it chooses to.
That's good. So it's actually that power inside, that sort of that side of things, kind of taking ownership, I guess.
Yeah.
And
you know, that's as you know, many people will say, we are all one, and God or Goddess is part of us as much as it is part of anything else. So I guess that's still working with the divine in a certain way. I've been experiencing profound results myself from working with affirmation, certainly, and positive beliefs about myself. It's been quite amazing. So.
Brilliant. It sounds really practical, really down to earth. I think it's integrating in a lot of what, you know, a lot of people need at the moment. So I will put some notes at the bottom of this video so people can see your website. And yeah, thank you so much for the interview. As I say, it's been really refreshing, really grounded. Absolutely love hearing your story.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay.
Thanks a lot, Ruth.
You're welcome.